and today we're going to talk about a movie called Black Phone. The plot of this movie revolves around the unexplained vanishings of a number of children from a rural community. Without further ado, let's go ahead and read the story. The action of the story starts in the year 1978, in the afternoon when Finney was playing soccer with his friends. He threw the ball multiple times and always striking it. On the third throw, Bruce, who was acting as the executor, managed to hit the ball in such a way that it was thrown far out of the field. At the same time, the throw of the ball at the same time brought an end to the match, which was won by Finney and Bruce's team. The next day, Bruce rode his bicycle around the apartment complex where he lived and teased the girls he saw, but soon he saw a suspicious car approaching him and stopped. After a short distance, Bruce continues to be harassed by a suspicious car that approaches him while he is cycling. It was reported at that time that a significant number of adolescents had vanished without a trace. Only Finney, his sister Gwen, and his father Rocky, who is a widower at this point, are currently residing in the family home. They are told that Rocky is a father figure who can be strict with both of them. While walking to school, as is customary, there are fights between school bullies who take place in the field. This time, Roby and Mose are seen engaging in fighting with one another. Finney is a good student at school, but there are some other students who are always bothering Finney there, and this happens quite frequently. When Finney is about to have his peace disturbed by three misbehaving children, Finney unexpectedly finds his good friend Roby in the room with him. Roby is one of the bullies at the school and recently got into a fight with Mose. After learning that Finney was friendly with Roby, the three of them had planned to bother Finney, but they suddenly became afraid of him. Additionally, Roby warned Finney that he would never trouble him again. Finney, the character, is a teenager who simply gives up, always relents, and accepts whatever the circumstance may be. Robin tells Finney at one point that Finney must have the courage to fight for what he believes in. According to Roby, life doesn't always have to give in, so you have to be tough on the world, and then the world will bow down to you when it realizes it can't compete with you. It would appear that there were two detectives who wanted to ask Gwen a few questions. One of the detectives asked about Bruce, who had been reported missing suddenly not long ago. It is common knowledge that Gwen has the ability to see missing people in her dreams. Gwen had a dream in which Bruce was kidnapped by someone who was carrying a black balloon and the kidnapper was driving a black van. Although it may seem odd, the information that the detective gleaned from Gwen's dream was necessary for the investigation because the authorities are having a hard time tracking down any traces of Bruce's disappearance. Not without reason because of Gwen's dream, which shares some similarities with some of the evidence discovered by the police, specifically a black balloon, but over time the detective seems to be investigating Gwen, forcing me to always answer every police question that is asked of me. Even though it was just a dream and not necessarily the truth, Gwen was still enraged by what she saw in her dream because it was only a brief glimpse and didn't provide any additional information. During the afternoon of that day, Roby was out for a stroll by herself when she noticed the black van parked in front of her. The kidnapping occurred once more, and now Roby is the city's next victim as a result of the string of consecutive kidnappings of children. As a result, a large number of adolescents have been reported missing. Teenie inquires about Roby's disappearance through her dream and requests that Gwen uncover its meaning. However, Roby's absence is not addressed. Gwen did not have a dream about Roby, which is a departure from the norm. Because Gwen always has dreams, and she always has dreams about the events surrounding people being kidnapped, especially if every teenager goes missing at the same time. Gwen performed the ritual one last time before going to bed, during which she prayed for information to come to her in her dreams so that she could pass it along to the authorities and increase the likelihood that the missing persons would be located. The next day, after they got home from school, Finney and Gwen were separated at the crossroads because Gwen was going to stay at Susie's house. However, as Finney walked around, he eventually came across a black van that was parked nearby. Finney himself was unaware that the vehicle in question belonged to the kidnapper until a stranger approached him and pretended to drop his luggage. When asked who he was, the stranger revealed that he was a street magician. And just as Finney was about to offer some assistance, he was immediately shoved and bundled into the vehicle. After Grabber leaves, Finney is taken and held in a basement. Once inside, Finney begins to look around the room, assessing the situation and looking for a way out. He hopes that he can get away from the basement. Finney saw there was a phone, but the phone was disconnected. /s For a moment Finney lay on the bed thinking about his fate now. Elsewhere, Gwen also discovered the news that Finney had gone missing. Gwen was taken aback by this information. Surprisingly, now even his own brother, who was taken hostage, became a victim of the kidnapping. It's been a few days, and I haven't gotten a hint from a dream since then. Suddenly, Finney's phone rang, and despite the fact that it was disconnected, he tried to pick it up. The kidnapper immediately came and said that Finney's phone had been broken for a long time, that he had just delivered food for Finney, and that he would be leaving soon. Finney made an effort to scream as loudly as he could, but it seems as though his efforts were in vain because the room was soundproof. Soon after, the phone rang once more. This time, it wasn't a dream, it was real. After Finney picked up the phone several times, he finally heard a woman's voice calling his name. Finney was frightened because there was no way that a woman's voice could be garbled over the phone. However, after the phone rang the first time, Finney picked it up again out of simple curiosity. This time, a male voice could be heard speaking to Finney, and it was later determined that the voice belonged to Bruce. Finney is given the instruction by Bruce to excavate the area because there is a fragile ceramic tile hidden within it. When you set up a trap, the phone will immediately be disconnected. While Finney is coming to terms with the fact that Bruce is no longer alive, the ghost of Bruce attempts to communicate with him over the phone. After a few days, Gwen finally reported that she had a dream in which she saw Bruce being abducted and saw Finney attempting to escape from a house. In the dream, Gwen said she also saw Finney. Finney made an effort to carry out Bruce's instructions. After successfully excavating the hole, he stuffed carpet into it. The following morning, Grabber returned to bring breakfast for Finney. It is unknown why Grabber kidnapped Finney and held him there, but when Grabber came back out, it appeared as though the door was unlocked. Finney then attempted to open the door, and he discovered that it was, in fact, unlocked. And just as he was about to open the door, the phone rang once more, interrupting his plans. He warned Finney not to leave the room because it was a trick, but the person who is now calling Finney is not Bruce, who was the one who called him yesterday. It was revealed that the person behind the voice was Billy, and Billy had no idea who Bruce was. He had no idea who he was or where he was from. The only thing that Billy could recall was his job as a newspaper vendor who enjoys getting some exercise by walking around the complex. Finney is aware that Billy is a seller, but at that time he didn't really care about his name. The most important thing was for Finney not to leave the room. If Finney tries to get out of the room, Finney will be punished and whipped until Finney dies. This is because this is what happened to Billy when he was punished by the Grabber. Grabber patiently watches for Finney to make errors on purpose so that he will have a justification to humiliate Finney when the time comes. Actually, the behavior of this Grabber is a little strange because the Grabber waits for the victim to make a mistake before punishing and then killing him. This is done so the Grabber can have a reason to kill the victim. The following day, Billy called Finney once more, and the bottle that had been moving on its own directed Finney to a window because exiting through a window was the most secure option for Finney. Gwen had another dream about Billy the newsboy while she was sleeping in class, and this time she saw a dry tree in front of the house where Billy had been kidnapped. Finney, following the instructions given to him by the ghost of Billy, was able to retrieve the cable, which Billy had painstakingly concealed somewhere in the room on purpose. However, it appeared as though Finney's efforts were in vain because the window was protected by thick glass. Gwen proceeded to tell her father about the dream, despite the fact that her father didn't really believe her dreams. However, that night, Gwen's father and Gwen attempted to go around the complex together. I had a dream in which I visited a location that felt very familiar to me, and because of this, Gwen believes that the area in which the house is situated is still part of their complex. During the time that the authorities and the two detectives were going from house to house in the complex looking for Max, they made their way to one of his homes. Instead, Max invited the two detectives into the house, and once they were there, it became clear that Max was also looking for information regarding the children who were reported missing. Max attempted to explain his theories to the detective, but the detective was uninterested in Max's explanations. Max's theories were not important to the detective. The detective inquires about how long Max has resided in the current residence. This was only a temporary residence for Max, as he has since moved into the home that his brother owns. Not much longer after that, the detective went home, and it was soon discovered that the house Finney was being held in was actually under the house. Finney is shown the past events of the haunting ghosts, and one by one, the victims slowly begin to be revealed. It turns out that a significant number of the victims were adolescents who had fallen prey to grabbers. Finney was instructed by one of the wandering spirits to leave the house. In order to do so, he had to unlock a door that was located above, and that door was secured with a padlock. Finney's code was needed to open the door. When Finney attempted to climb to the top of the building, he discovered the grabber dozing off. Finney started to unlock the padlock in a methodical and cautious manner. Eventually, Finney was successful in unlocking the padlock, and he immediately left that place. Unfortunately for Finney, he did not have enough time to run very far, and Graber immediately chased after him and was able to catch him. The phone rings once more, and this time it is one of the thugs that lives in the complex, Ben Finney. Finney is assisted by the ghosts until he discovers a way out that can penetrate the freezer room that is no longer functioning. This assistance comes from the haunting spirits of the victims who were grabbed by the grabber. However, Finney struggled tremendously to get through the freezer cupboard. Finney wanted to give up because despite his best efforts, he had been unsuccessful in all of his previous endeavors. Soon after that, the phone rang again, and this time it seemed as if Finney had given up hope of picking it up. However, this time it was Finney's own best friend, Roby, who contacted him when Finney was no longer excited here. When Finney had to be courageous in order to fight, Roby continues to offer moral support to Finney while reminding him that someday it will be today, the day when he must have the courage to defend himself. Finney needs to have faith in himself and know that he is capable of making it through all of this. Victims' families need him to survive so that their loved ones' deaths are not in vain, and the grabber needs to be stopped before there are any more victims. Roby instructed Finney on how to fight and demonstrated the devastating power that could be delivered by a well-placed punch. Afterward, Roby asked Finney to load the receiver with sand so that it could contribute to the force of the punch. After everything has been prepared, everything now depends on Finney, and this will be the final conversation with Roby. Gwen is still looking for the house that she saw in her dream. I hope she finds it soon. Then, all of a sudden, I was taken aback to see a large number of people standing in the middle of the road. These were individuals who had been taken advantage of by grabbers. The appearance of the spirits served as a warning to Gwen, and when she finally located the house in her dream, she knew without a doubt that it belonged to the kidnapper. Gwen immediately began to make her way back to the police station in order to report her discovery. In that house, Max himself was unaware that the family who lived with him was a kidnapper. However, Max had reason to suspect that one of the rooms in the house, which was always locked, was connected to the kidnapping. In the manner in which the target is, Max discovers that there is Finney in the basement, and then all of a sudden the grabber appears and stabs him immediately. After Gwen and the police set up an ambush outside the house, the grabber was cornered inside and forced to kill his own brother out of fear that Max would reveal the grabber's identity. The grabber intends to have a good time in this location. He refers to Samson as his companion animal. However, everything is already planned out according to Finney. Finney is now taking retaliatory action, so use that phone. After that, Finney launches a savage assault against the grabber. Finney is successful in injuring the grabber. It wasn't until the very end that Graber was defeated. Just before he passed away, his phone rang again. Finney then gave his phone to Graber, and the voice on the other end was the spirits of the people who had been killed by Graber. On the other side of the house, the authorities discovered nothing but a room in the basement that contained the graves of the victims. It also comes to light that Finney himself is being held captive in a different house, specifically the house that is directly in front of the other house. Not long after that, Finney finally came to see his father, Finney, who had survived here, and Finney's father apologized to his 2 children who had always been tough. Finney had managed to survive here. His father expresses his gratitude that Finney is able to return with him, and he also expresses his regret to Gwen for ignoring his dreams. It turned out that it wasn't just a dream, but a gift to Gwen, and the nightmare that had been plaguing the city is finally over. Moreover, inside of that home, the authorities discovered the bodies of 5 people who had been murdered by the grabber. After everything that happened to Finney, everyone at school now respects and fears Finney. This is because Finney ultimately passed away at the hands of the Finney grabber, and here is where the movie comes to a close. Okay, you guys, it's possible that we'll arrive first. The narrative will continue in the next video. Goodbye from here and greetings from me.